Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This session is on setting up your finance ops teams for success. This session is hosted by Peakflo, which is an AR automation software built for Asia. And we're joined here by Pickupp. Pickupp is a very high growth on-demand tech delivery platform in Asia, and also happens to be one of the oldest customers of Peakflo. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Saurabh, founder and CEO of Peakflo. Would you like to go, Chee Meng?
Hi, Saurabh. I'm Chee Meng. I'm the Co-COO of Pickupp, and I'm very happy to be at this webinar. So I look forward to sharing more in terms of how Pickupp has used the automation to set up our finance operations for success.
Awesome. So I think for the audience, let's just quickly set up a little bit of context here. Chee Meng, thanks for that. I think the overall process for sales to collection looks deceptively simple, right? So there are basically just four major components. If you take a quick glance, which is the new order comes in, the invoice gets issued, the teams then have to do cash collection, and finally the reconciliation happens. However, if you zoom in, the process is a lot more complex than what appears on the surface. And this is where the finance operations team come in. And they are the ones who are driving this very complex process from getting from invoice all the way to cash, and then ensuring that it's all reconciled correctly. And the steps involved are, even after sending the invoices, unpaid invoices have to be monitored, they have to be tracked. Reminders have to be sent to customers in certain areas wherein the delays are caused by invoice disputes. Sometimes the sales team has to be looped in, who have a relationship with the business side of the client to resolve those disputes. And lastly, even after the payment comes in, there is a lot of reconciliation related effort back and forth in case the customer is making payments without adding any reference ID or reference number. And lastly, from a CXO perspective, there's always a requirement to get real-time tracking visibility into what cash flows exist for the company. And I think the process is pretty intensive and time-consuming for the finance operations team. So this complexity creates a lot of challenges, and these challenges are experienced by different stakeholders. So I guess now that we have set some context, I would love for Chee Meng, you to sort of jump in here and sort of shed some light on what are the top challenges faced by Pickupp, because as an operations leader at a very high growth company that is seen, especially due to the pandemic, logistics and supply chain industry has grown exponentially over the last 1.5 years. I'm sure this must have added a lot more workload for your finance ops teams. And just wondering how has the journey been like, and which stakeholders have faced most of the challenges?
Sure. Well, I think to start off, I think it's always useful to point out, to note that for every company who's starting out, I think when you're a lot smaller scale, it tends to be a lot easier and simpler and to some extent a lot more straightforward to track certain things manually, especially when you're talking about invoice issuance, you're talking about tracking the payments. But once you grow and scale to a certain extent, and especially if you're scaling very quickly, things very quickly can get messy unless everything is centrally tracked. So I think the previous few slides you actually mentioned, that invoice issuance is actually a very straightforward process on paper, right? But there will always be more intricacies involved. I think there are a couple of challenges that I think that we face mainly during the whole invoicing process. The first of which is actually the invoice issuance, the process of invoice issuance, because I would say majority of customers is fairly straightforward, right? Pickupp is a delivery company, so we bill our customers for the deliveries that we completed. So a lot of times it is very straightforward in terms of X number of deliveries and you pay X dollars. But there will always be a small minority of occasions where there are certain disputes on the amounts that are invoiced, and this can often be a very disjointed process because they're either speaking to the accounts team who issues the invoice, or they're speaking directly to the salesperson who handles their account. So it can be very disjointed because there are many different parties in this whole process, and sometimes certain parties are not talking to each other, right? So it can be a very long drawn out process, and that's something that we try to cut down, because doing the job is one part of the equation, right? But issuing the invoice and getting payment is only then that you consider the job completed. So invoice issuance has always been a very big challenge for us in order to get them out timely and efficiently. Well, the second big challenge that we have previously was tracking the amount of outstandings that we have. I think this is fairly self-explanatory, right? I've kind of set the stage at the earlier parts in saying that I think when you're at a certain scale and a certain size, it's a lot easier to remember and have a tracking sheet for all your different merchants, right, who are owing you money. But once you get to a certain size, I think it's a lot more difficult unless you have it down on a central tracking system where it is clearly visible and transparent to all stakeholders to know when to start chasing for payments and all. And then following up in the third challenge here obviously is the repetitive like follow-ups in terms of chasing after your vendors, right, to pay. So it used to be a case where, you know, the different stakeholders, like be it from the accounts team or the sales team, right, they have to chase down these merchants in order to get the outstanding invoices paid. And again, right, that can be a very messy process because a lot of these processes are either recorded down, like say in a text message, in emails. So there was no real way to kind of track how the process in which we are trying to recover these outstanding payments. So I would say that these are a few of the biggest challenges that we face actually over the course of scaling up.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I think monitoring, tracking, having data get lost or information get lost because of siloed communications, and that leading to delays between teams. I think that are some of the things that we've also heard from most of our other customers as well. But since I think you guys adopted finance automation and AR automation specifically, I guess a few quarters ago, it's been a few quarters. So in general, we always sort of visualize companies that don't have finance automation as finance teams and teams going through a lot of stress and a lot of, I would say, mundane tasks that are not necessarily let's say very, very enriching and very fulfilling. Whereas I guess with finance automation, it does allow your team to focus on higher productivity or higher value-added tasks, so to speak. Is that a form of experience that you've also seen with your team?
Well, yeah, for sure. I think I think the illustration that you have here is pretty accurate, right? When you're trying to track down your outstanding invoices and track down your merchants on a manual basis, it can be very, very messy, especially if you're growing at a certain scale. And again, right, having finance automation not just saves the time in terms of tracking down payments. I think it also saves time and a lot of trouble even internally among different teams because like I mentioned previously, the whole invoicing process and the whole liaising process with the merchants can be very fragmented and siloed at times. Even up until now, it's inevitable that there's always going to be some sort of a siloed communication because the salespeople are handling the accounts on a daily basis versus the finance team who are really looking at the money on a daily basis. They kind of look at different things, right? So having a portal where it's transparent, where everyone has access to, where everybody can track the exact status of certain invoices or whether there have been any follow-ups by any teams. So this is definitely very helpful in terms of two things, right? Both external and internal. So it's definitely been very, very helpful in terms of helping us streamline the whole process.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think at this point, I would love to sort of look at some numbers because we've been lucky to have you guys on board since the start of this year pretty much, and that sort of has helped us look back on the data versus how things were when you guys started using the Peakflo software versus how far we've seen some of the metrics change, and I just wanted to get your sense on this. But I think overall what we've noticed is the programmable workflows. I think that is a functionality that is helped save a lot of time and effort for the team in terms of streamlining and automating at least the long tail communication, and then at the same time allowing, like you correctly mentioned, real-time access to your sales team stakeholders to actually come in and perform those high value added tasks if they need to get involved at some stage in the workflow, or get access to real-time information. If they just need to track what is the current outstanding for a specific key account that they're handling. So we've seen a lot of usage across teams, not just necessarily by the finance ops function, but even the sales and account managers logging in and checking things out. But would love to sort of dig a little deeper around that as well.
Well, I think the main point here is, as I brought up a little bit earlier, it other than the saving the hassle from the external facing stakeholders, right, in terms of how we interface and liaise with the debtors, I think the important thing here as well is that because of the hassle or the trouble that it saves internally in terms of the communications is a lot more efficient. It actually does increase productivity, right? Because the amount of time that you actually need to spend, when you're kind of manually following up on all these outstanding invoices and having your internal teams talking to each other and kind of finding out more from each other on the status of certain invoices, all that time actually can be saved, when you're actually having on a central tracking platform. And obviously with the automation steps that are available, a lot of these certain workflows are also reduced as well. So I think that definitely in terms of productivity, I would say that has increased because it has really cut out a lot of hassle and a lot of time that's been saved in the internal communications. And I think I think your stats here really show for itself, right, in terms of helping us to reduce the amount of time that it takes for us to chase back certain payments.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for sharing your valuable insights and experience with us, Chee Meng. We really value that. I'll just probably take 1 minute over here and start wrapping up this short webinar that we're having. So I think the way the AR automation system helps high growth companies such as Pickupp is effectively focusing on 4 core components to streamline the entire invoice collections and revenue collections process. And I think what the 4 pillars look like is the programmable automated workflows that help the team to take a step back, categorize their customers into different groups, and create different escalation matrix, which involves manual actions or automatic actions, depending on what makes sense for those customer groups. Set up different credit limits, so on and so forth. Second is obviously giving the power to your customers. So I think one of the things that we heard very frequently as a feedback, and I think this included from Pickupp very early on, was customers requiring statement of accounts to be sent to them every time there was, they had to pay on some outstanding dues. And we very quickly realized that it's not just enough to allow the customer to see that one invoice that you're chasing on, but you need to show the entire SOA accessible to them at any given point of time that they choose to. But at the same time, they would also want to potentially comment on the invoice if they have a question, or potentially, like you correctly said, invoices once in a while could lead to certain item level things that get disputed by the customer. And ideally, you want the customer to be able to attach a working file in order to share what data makes sense to them, or be able to use a template that you share. So we've seen empowering your customers through a self-serve portal has been critical in achieving this. And lastly, reconciliation of payments obviously becomes easier if payments are made from a centralized system, automatically feeding data back to your ERP system or your accounting software, at the same time helping your team not spend too much time and effort in reconciliation, and most importantly, as Chee Meng, you mentioned during this conversation, measuring AR effectiveness, tracking outstanding, monitoring cash flows, having visibility on what is working, what is not working, and really allowing your your C-suite to do things. And I think to this extent, just for Pickupp alone, we've seen about on average 4,000 reminders go out, with about 60% open rate, which has triggered about 1,000+ conversations. We are the customer portal, and all of these are recorded in an audit trail that is available to your finance and operations team via reports. So I think these programmable workflows allow the entire stakeholders, both internally and externally, to sort of stay better aligned. And this is what really is the 10x leverage over here. So I guess I just want to wrap off by saying that if you're also a high growth company looking to maximize your cash inflows, reach out to us and talk to our sales team at our exhibition booth here at the Accounting and Finance Show 2021. We're offering an exclusive 2-month trial for the attendees of this webinar and the show. So we'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time, Chee Meng, and thank you so much for sharing your learnings and your experience with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.